The Greek finance minister quits, citing pressure from the EU and international creditors, who he claims want him kept out of debt talks. It all comes after a big fat Greek rejection. A key nationwide bailout referendum sees a decisive no to further cuts in exchange for a financial lifeline. And talks on Iran's nuclear program are heading right down to the wire, with the latest deadline set to expire on Tuesday. The US says that it's ready to walk if there's no deal. Thanks so much for joining us. My name's Neil Harvey and you're watching RT International. The Greek finance minister Yanis Varoufakis has resigned. The move came completely out of the blue after the overwhelming victory of the no vote in the Greek referendum. Varoufakis had campaigned for the rejection of further austerity in exchange for more funds from creditors. He had said he'd likely resign if the people voted yes. But just several hours ago, when the referendum was underway, he seemed determined he was going nowhere.
Would you resign if there's a yes vote?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And there won't be a yes vote.
Tonight,
so you're stuck with me.
If there's a yes vote?
He tweeted, "Minister no more," just hours after he'd been celebrating and praising the Greeks for overwhelmingly voting to reject further spending cuts. And the night before his resignation, some journalists noticed one light had remained on at the Ministry of Finance, with speculation that it was his office. Earlier, cameras caught the finance minister as he arrived on his motorbike at the residence of the Greek Prime Minister. Casually dressed and holding a mobile phone, he headed to discuss the referendum results with Alexis Tsipras. Following the meeting, Varoufakis came out with a warning for Europe.
Από αύριο, η Ευρώπη, της οποίας η καρδιά σήμερα το βράδυ χτυπάει στην Ελλάδα, αρχίζει να γιατρεύει τις πληγές της, τις πληγές μας. Το όχι το σημερινό είναι ένα μεγάλο ναι στη δημοκρατική Ευρώπη. Είναι ένα όχι στο όραμα της Ευρωζώνης ως απέραντο σιδερένιο κλουβί των λαών της.
The Greek finance chief has published a statement on his website. It explains the reasons behind his surprise decision to step down. He says it was due to pressure from Brussels.
Soon after the announcement of the referendum results, I was made aware of a certain preference by some Eurogroup participants and assorted partners for my absence from its meetings. An idea that the Prime Minister judged to be potentially helpful to him in reaching an agreement. For this reason, I'm leaving the Ministry of Finance today.
And for more on these claims of pressure from Brussels, let's bring in Stathis Kalevas. He's a political scientist from Yale University. Stathis, welcome to you. Now, it was just yesterday Varoufakis gave the impression he had absolutely no intention of stepping down, and surely any hostility from the Eurogroup, that's nothing new to him. So why do it now?
Well, absolutely. Yesterday night he was triumphant, and nobody would have expected him to quit. In fact, I think a more exact description of what happened is probably he was fired by the Prime Minister in an attempt to create goodwill so that he could jumpstart the negotiations. As you said, it was no secret that the relations he had generated with the rest of the Eurozone and the creditors were not good, to say the least, and as a result, he was basically not in a position to restart the negotiations at this critical moment. So you have to see that as an attempt by the Prime Minister to try to resort to some new beginning, given the dire situation of the economy here in Athens and in Greece on the ground, with the banks and the economy in a standstill. The week is going to be very, very critical, and Prime Minister Tsipras needs to move very, very fast.
There's no doubt whatsoever European leaders have been putting a lot of pressure on Athens recently. Let's just take a listen to some of the rhetoric.
This government has done nothing since it came into office. It's reneged on previously agreed commitments. You can't in all honesty expect us to talk with them in a situation like this.
Given the political situation, the rejection of the previous proposals and the no advice of the Greek government, we see no ground for further talks at this point.
I'm blaming the Greeks to tell things to the Greek public which are not consistent with what I told the Greek Prime Minister.
So there's been considerable pressure, and without Varoufakis, do you think Tsipras is up to the job? Can he perform this escape act flying solo?
He certainly can perform. One thing to keep in mind is that not only Varoufakis burned the bridges and made a compromise impossible by generating such an impossible gap between himself and the rest of the creditors, but at the same time, keep in mind that his main strategy was the so-called chicken game in game theory parlance, the idea that if Greece threatens to default, the euro would collapse. And what we are seeing, and we've been seeing from last week, is that the markets are not reacting in the way Varoufakis expected. In a sense, Varoufakis thought Greece would be the suicide bomber whose threat would actually work to promote a better agreement, a better deal for Greece. But at the end of the day, it seems like Greece is going to be the kind of suicide bomber that only manages to kill herself and nobody else. So he has failed, and as a result of that, he has to be replaced. The problem is that that may be coming too late, and that may be too little at this moment. It would have been a good move perhaps 2 months ago, but I'm very doubtful that given the extreme constraints that exist right now, that this is going to be sufficient.
Stathis, it sounds from what you've said as though you feel that Varoufakis' influence was a fairly disruptive one. Does that mean that debt talks will actually improve in the future without him there?
It is not clear to see exactly how. I think, as I said, there is so much mistrust right now between Greece and its counterparts that you need a lot to get everything restarted. On top of it, the deal that will take place, if it does happen, will require much more, many more sacrifices, given that the damage that has been inflicted on the Greek economy in this past week is pretty enormous. So we're talking about a new bailout of a bigger magnitude than anything that was considered up until last week.
OK, Stathis, thanks so much for joining us, speaking to Stathis Kalivas, political scientist from Yale University. Now, hours before this morning's dramatic news, Greeks had been celebrating after overwhelmingly rejecting further austerity in exchange for another bailout from international creditors. Jubilant crowds flooded the streets of Athens following Sunday's referendum. The final tally showed 61% voted no to bailout conditions offered by creditors, while 39% said yes. The result means an uncertain future for Greece and for the Eurozone itself. RT's Ila Petrenka has more from Athens, where Greeks woke to the surprising news of the resignation of their finance minister.
The words "Varoufakis has resigned" was the first thing that I heard when I woke up this morning, and I thought I was still dreaming. And apparently the Greeks had the same reaction this morning. Everyone in Athens is of course surprised. When it comes to the no camp, it's more of a surprise with sympathy, not so many sympathizers among the yes voters. While at the same time, I can tell you that I'm sure that some Greeks still haven't heard the latest news because they're still in bed after a very big celebration that you've already mentioned on Syntagma Square. Let's see how that went.
It was a difficult and a very long journey for the No campaign, but now it's their time. They can celebrate, sing songs. I can see people hugging each other here, and everyone is extremely happy. Now, can you share your emotions with me after the dance?
Extraordinary! Excited! I feel proud to be Greek. We love Europe, but they don't love us.
We owe a lot to Tsipras, who stood up against all our enemies, against all the people who wanted to suffocate Greece.
So it was so much propaganda against Tsipras from the press here in Athens, from abroad, so much pressure against the government, but truth is truth.
The people here tell me that they deserve it, and it's going to be a big night for them.
RT's Ilya Petrenko reporting there. Now, the Greek Prime Minister said that the no vote had given him greater strength to continue negotiations. He also stressed how important the referendum was for European history.
Το σημερινό δημοψήφισμα δεν έχει νικητές και ηττημένους. Αποτελεί μια μεγάλη νίκη από μόνο του. Σήμερα όλες και όλοι μαζί γράψαμε μια λαμπρή σελίδα στη σύγχρονη ευρωπαϊκή ιστορία. Αποδείξαμε ότι ακόμα και στις πιο δύσκολες συνθήκες η δημοκρατία δεν εκβιάζεται.
What the Greek no means for the rest of Europe is now a question that's being asked right across the bloc. With the news dominating today's front pages, the headlines proclaiming everything from Europe in crisis to a moment of truth. And while Greece was celebrating the referendum result, there was thunder and lightning in Berlin, literally, with many Twitter users feeling it was a fitting coincidence. Some suggested it was the Greek vote which fired up the weather. Others asked if the Greek gods were punishing Germany. Meanwhile, EU officials have said the ball is now firmly in Athens' court.
The conclusions to be drawn from the referendum must be decided first and foremost in Greece. That's why the ball is now in Athens' court.
This is a difficult day, and the promise of Prime Minister Tsipras to the Greek people that with the no, the position of Greece for negotiating a better deal would become better is, in my eyes, not true.
I have taken note of the results of the referendum. This outcome is regrettable for the future of Greece.
The President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, has called an emergency Eurozone summit for Tuesday, while the German Chancellor is heading to Paris today to discuss the situation with the French President. Madrid-based trader Felix Moreno de la Corva believes that other debt-ridden countries may eventually follow the Greek rejection of austerity.
It might be a domino effect from a point of view of the market, saying if Greece within the euro has defaulted, what's the probability of France, Italy, Spain, Portugal defaulting, and how much debt do they have? And they're going to start looking at their debt again without considering it a risk-free asset. The countries that already have a very high debt to GDP ratio are going to suddenly see the interest payments become a very large part of the budget, and then that might start to get them thinking on the same lines as Syriza. We obviously have Marine Le Pen in France, Beppe Grillo in Italy, and Podemos in Spain, who have very similar, or at least who have the same mistrust of the euro and the ECB and the European institutions as Syriza has. So there is that possibility, obviously.
For more information on the Greek vote and the reaction it has triggered, just head to rt.com, where our online teams prepared an interactive timeline of Athens' resistance to austerity demands, starting with the election win of the current government. To follow all that, just head to our website.